I want to move on now to the focus group you mentioned earlier. What exactly is a focus group?
Well, in a case like this, a focus group is a gathering of several members of the community to watch portions of a script or piece of art and determine whether or not they are similar, because the best understanding of a similarity comes from its audience.
How do you go about conducting a focus group?
Well, usually, in this case at least, I got 30 members of the Midlands and I had them come to a mall, and had the argument, a portion of the argument and the portion of the debate performed for each one. I redacted all titles and had the vote for the alternate endings and subsequent alternate endings. And then I handed them a survey to determine what they thought was similar or not. And then we had a film discussion in which we discussed how similar these two plays were.
Did you follow any guidelines or protocols when you were setting up that focus group?
Yes, I followed the guidelines set forth by the Association of American Public Research, which basically outlines ways to form a focus group that is fair and just and is not corrupt.
What were the results of your focus group?
Well, I actually brought a chart in order to help describe the results of this focus group in court today.
Objection, Your Honor, improper opinion. If I may have permission to voir dire on these focus groups before she discusses any of the conclusions.
You may.
Good evening, Dr. Wilkinson.
Good evening.
I just want to get something straight for myself and the members of the jury about exactly how you conducted these focus groups, all right? So you mentioned on direct examination that you brought in 30 members of the Midlands community, right?
Yes, I did.
And you had them watch 30-minute excerpts of each play, right?
That is correct. Equal time for each play.
Now, these members of the community, they didn't have any special knowledge in theater, did they?
No audience member needs to have that kind of special knowledge to view anything like this.
They weren't theater experts.
No, it doesn't take an expert to see a play.
They were just people in the community who you paid $100 for their time to come in and watch that play, right?
Yes, it's difficult to get volunteers for a focus group.
And when you were asking them the questions in the focus group, they weren't under oath, right?
They were not.
They weren't sworn to tell the truth.
They were not.
And I want to talk about exactly what you decided to include in the 30-minute excerpts you showed these focus groups. Oh, Doctor, you'd agree with me that between the argument and the debate, there were portions that showed direct textual similarity, right?
Only 2%, but that was the only textual similarity, which were the monologues.
The monologues that start off Act 2, right?
That is correct.
The monologues that show the audience how their vote affected which way the play would go, right?
To my knowledge, yes.
So naturally, Doctor, if you're trying to determine how similar audiences would think these plays were, you'd include the only parts that you yourself admit show some similarity, right?
Well, I did not include these portions because they were such a small portion of both plays. They were 2%.
Doctor, you're telling me you didn't choose to include the only portions of the play that showed similarity when you were trying to determine how similar these two plays were?
They were the only textual similarities, but there were similarities between both plays, and I included them, including the audience vote and the alternate endings.
But you chose not to include the portions that showed direct, word-for-word similarity in this focus group, right?
Yes, I did not think that they were big portions of the plays or important.
Your Honor, at this time I would renew my objection to improper opinion under 702C. This is not a reliable method.
Defense your response.
Your Honor, Ms. Wilkinson has already stated that she utilized the principles and guidelines laid out by the American Association for Public Opinion Research. She stated that she applied those guidelines to the best of her abilities when conducting this focus group. Opposing counsel has done nothing more than attack the weight of the results of that focus group rather than the admissibility of the testimony from Dr. Wilkinson.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, she's about to provide testimony to the jury about what these focus groups thought. These focus groups aren't comprised of people with any specific theater knowledge. They weren't under oath. They weren't shown representative portions of the plays. In fact, pursuant to Stipulation 3, both parties have stipulated that the only textual similarity parts of the plays are Exhibits 11 and 12, the monologue. The court, before today's trial, ruled that no other parts showed textual similarity, and this witness chose directly to exclude the only parts that showed textual similarity. Therefore, the results of this focus group are entirely misleading to the jury and are not a proper method pursuant to 702C.
If I might be heard, Your Honor.
Yes.
Again, the 702C states that the methods must be reliable. However, Dr. Wilkinson has already stated that she did reliably apply those methods based on the outlines laid out by the very association which creates these focus groups. Now, Dr. Wilkinson may have used people who didn't have very much experience in theater, but that doesn't make it a non-reliable method simply because the people did not have expertise in theater. Rather, it might make it a more reliable method because random, everyday people are suggesting that these plays are not as similar as the plaintiff would have you believe.
I'm going to sustain an objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Wilkinson, considering the results of your independent analysis, were you able to reach an ultimate conclusion for today's case?
Yes, considering the 5 categories that I compared the plays between, I concluded that the plays did not reach the level of substantially similar that would indicate copying.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. I'll have no further questions at this time. Permission to deconstruct demonstratives?
Yes.